Hi, and welcome to the overview of our Normandy road trip. It's something a little different and a little longer than usual. We're going to start on the M20 as the approach to the Channel Tunnel. In the next 30 minutes plus, I'll pack in as much useful information as possible. There'll be extra EV content as this is our first international trip in the Polestar 2. This is our final piece from the trip, and we covered a lot of the tour in other videos in this series, and I'll pop that playlist up at the end. If you've followed the series so far, you'll know that the inspiration for this trip was a visit to the British Normandy War Memorial just outside Bayeux. And we then chose Dives-sur-Mer as our second destination for its links to William the Conqueror, taking the scenic route between the two. Then we finally headed along the coast for a quick peek at Deauville's coastline before arriving back in Calais. Anyway, without further ado, let's hit the road. So our journey starts like any other, heading along the M20 towards Folkestone. Although yesterday was different. Rather than head to the local petrol station that's 5 minutes away and fill up the car for the journey, I just clicked on the app. The car normally sits at recommended 90%, but for our trips I used the max range. I guess that saved me 25 minutes and the inconvenience. I'll talk more about range a little later in the video, so if you're interested, hang fire for that. Also, whilst planning the trip, I've checked the RAC website for the latest travel requirements for France. The high-vis jackets are in the car, and I also have my Crit-Air, the little emission sticker that is mandatory for all vehicles. Ours is the little green one. You need to sort this out a month before you plan to visit. They only cost €5 and last the entire life of the car. I'll add links to all the sites I mentioned in the description, so check them out if they're of interest to you. Anyway, so this is the 15th of July. So to help us acclimatise to driving on the right, Kent County Council has instigated Operation Brock, the big car park on the motorway, a hangover from Brexit. So this will slow us down for the next 13 miles or so. If there's an accident, it can be painful. Anyway, we're in luck and we're heading off at junction 11A. And the check-in process was painless, but I should add we're here a little early at around about 6:45 in the morning. We've made this crossing many times over the years, and each time something seems to change. For those with EVs, there's plenty of charging facilities, but there's not a petrol station. In the terminal building there's a couple of eateries, a stationer's and an AA store in case you've missed anything. We really stop here and make our way to the holding car park in the hope that we can get an earlier shuttle. I don't need to make use of the restrooms as Janice has made sure I went before I left home, and that was only 35 miles ago. Amazing to think I'm 57. Now we have passport control, customs and security checks. Again, this can be slow, but you just need to be patient, and don't worry you've picked the slowest queue. Once you've cleared this, then it's onto the holding car park, and if you're lucky you're boarding shortly after that. The 35 minutes crossing time doesn't take long to pass, but we don't have kids in the car. Popping out the other side, and from check-in point to here has taken around about an hour and a half, and we're on our way. Now as we head to the A16, we do something a little different. We normally stick to the right lanes and head east towards the A26 south or Dunkirk for Belgium and Germany. Rarely do we head west. We settle in for the 233-mile drive from Calais to Bayeux. Add to that the 35 miles we've already done, and those 270 miles range should be easy for a car with a WLTP range of 350 miles, right? No. The real world range of our Polestar 2 is probably closer to 250 miles at motorway speeds, maybe less with luggage. If you want to check out the real world range of any EV, then follow the link to the electric vehicle database, which I'll put in the description. So, we plan to stop at the Aire de la Baie de Caen, some 65 miles from Calais, We should arrive there around about 10:15 local time. Don't forget we've moved forward an hour when we entered France. That will be 3 hours after leaving home, and it'll be time for a comfort break, a leg stretch, and this Aire has a deli, Starbucks, a viewing platform over the Somme, and a bank of ultra-rapid energy charters. According to the app, there's a couple free, so let's see how we get on. There's also a bank of Tesla chargers, but they're not open for other brands. Anyhow, we find a free charger, and I slowly get parked up. It takes a minute or two to authenticate my Electroverse card, and we're ready to head in. In future, plug and charge will make it even easier. It's not available on our Polestar 2 yet. It may come as a future software update, or it may not. So we head in, refresh ourselves, grab a coffee and a French patisserie, while we take in the views over the landscape, all while the car happily charges away. Now we're ready to hit the road again after taking on a little over 30 kilowatt hours of charge at a cost of $14.42. That's around 47p per kilowatt hour. Very reasonable compared to UK prices. And to give you a true comparison, based on our figures, that's a cost of about 15p per mile. So we now rejoin the A16 as we continue our journey south. I had a little poll on the channel a while back asking opinions on whether I should speed up the footage or not. It was a mixed response, but I guess the consensus was it's okay. So here we go. And a little word about speeding, and this one goes out to my friend Brad. Now generally I keep to the speed limit. In past days I may have stretched them a little, but these days I keep well within them to help the range. Travelling at 130 km per hour, which is a little over 80 miles per hour, has a disproportionately larger impact than say 110, so I tend to stick to about 120. Anyway, back to Brad. Earlier this year on his travels down to Antibes on the French Riviera, tested a widely held belief that the speed limits were indicative, and maybe the tolls increase if you arrive too early. On day one he passed an unmarked police car at speed and was quickly joined by two further gendarmes on motorcycles, who escorted him off the Autoroute and promptly issued him with an on-the-spot fine, card machine in hand. A lesson learned for the rest of the trip. We have witnessed speed traps set up in laybys, so they do exist. It just may be easier to keep to the speed limit. And as we take the turn for the A26, there's the other cost. Tolls. On our way to Bayeux, we had 5, totaling a little under €30. But the benefits are that the toll sections of the Autoroute are generally quite clear. If you want to avoid the tolls, it's easy enough, but it will be much slower going. Most routing software will have the option, although there are some tolls you cannot avoid, and we'll see a couple of those later. Now a word of warning, you need to think ahead. You can pay by cash or card, and then there's the télépeage, and we'll come to that later. Some toll gates you just need to collect a ticket. If you're like us, you can use a normal gate where the machine is on the left and Janice collects the ticket whilst I try to get as close as possible without damaging the alloys. There are some, normally on the right of the booths, that have a machine on the right for those of us with right-hand drive cars. And then on the far left there's the télépeage booths and a T above. You collect your ticket here and pay like we did at the last booth, or if you exit the Autoroute at an earlier junction. We picked ours up 42 miles or 68 kilometres earlier and paid the €9.20. However, there are some where there's just a fee. And there's the 3 options I mentioned. However, you need to make sure you're in the correct lane. The télépeage with the T, credit cards with the symbol that looks like a credit card, and the other one which I guess looks like a symbol of coins being chucked into the collection scoop. Please make sure you arrive at the correct one. If you cause a delay, you'll be as popular as a plague carrier. Now, have you noticed how the weather has changed? Gone are those blue skies? Remember, when it rains, the speed limit on the autoroutes drops from 130 km an hour to 110, a little over 80 miles an hour to just under 70. Anyway, let's talk about télépeage. As you can see, we don't have one, but we will. It's a convenience thing. We're travelling to France later this year, and again at least once in 2026, possibly twice. The gastronomy of Burgundy is calling. Anyway, the Péage, and a breakdown of the costs. There's a €10 application fee, a €10 annual account fee, a €20 refundable security tag deposit, and a €7 fee for each month you used it, capped at €14 for 2 months. That comes in at €47 plus UK VAT. But look for offers because we got ours for €37 with a Shuttle. The good news is that from year 2 onwards, you only pay the account fee and the monthly fee, which is either €17 or €24. You don't get a discount, but you do get to pass swiftly through the tolls. And if you want to see how we get on, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we're going to be posting future trips with the Péage. And if you like this video, and if I've packed as much info in as I can, then why not give us a like? We'd appreciate it. The weather has taken a turn for the worse, as you can clearly see, which is a shame because we're approaching the Pont de Normandie. And now, despite the fact that the traffic is starting to back up, this brings back fond memories of trips to the Le Mans 24-hour race in the mid-90s. Our ferry docked at Le Havre and we set off in the white transit minibus to the famous Circuit de la Sarthe. And the only toll we paid was the Pont de Normandie. The rest of the journey was on end roads. I mentioned on our blog, that's ourworldforyou.com if you didn't know, that this is where my love affair with France began. I think it was the relaxed attitude and the celebration of speed. Sorry, I've gone all misty-eyed. So I mentioned that you can avoid tolls. Most routing software and navigation aids will allow you to turn them off, but your journey will take longer. If you want to make an informed decision, then consider the Via Michelin site, as this gives you a breakdown of the toll costs and options to reduce that if you wish. There'll be a link in the description, of course, and an app available for your mobile. It's one of our tools of choice when planning a trip through France, although it really is global. Maybe give it a try. It has some really useful features like stopover ideas and amenities en route. Anyway, we now have rain, roadworks, and it looks like another toll. This is one of those where you don't collect a ticket first. Now, I know I have one more toll before we reach our turn off on the Autoroute, and I'm planning to have another recharge. I really don't need it, but we are being overly cautious. This is our first trip. We didn't choose accommodation with charging, but that shouldn't be a problem. We do want to head out tomorrow for a little road trip, so it'll be nice to have a decent range. We now reach our final toll of the day, and the total for this trip has come out at €29.60. We're coming up to the city of Caen, and the A13 will morph into the N814. And what this means is the traffic will build up. You generally see this as you approach cities unless a bypass has been created, and again that will cost. It's worth bearing this in mind if you go the way of the toll-free routes. So we're looking for our next charger, and the car's a little over 40%, or just under half a tank in old money. 40% will give me a range of around 100 miles, and it's 22 miles to the hotel. Tomorrow's journey is going to be around 60 miles, but I want to make sure we have plenty of range in hand. Parked up and charging, and this is a bit of a wasted stop. We're running through our plans once we get to Bayeux, but not much else. We take on a little over 32 kilowatt hours of charge in 20 minutes, which is added around 37% or a little over 100 miles of range, giving us a total of 190 miles of range. Compared to our previous car, the Audi S3, we probably would have seen a range of around 350 miles. So I would have made it all the way to the hotel without needing a refill. There you go, just being honest. Rather than showing you more traffic, let's jump ahead a little to us arriving in Bayeux. But I do need to include a few transitions, because otherwise you're not going to believe this weather. And in no time at all, we're heading off the N13. We're going to negotiate a few roundabouts, pass an industrial estate or two, into the leafy suburbs of Bayeux. And there's something I want to show you. On our left are two 22 kilowatt AC chargers. There's a few in town, and a couple of 160 kilowatt chargers at the Carrefour. But for me, it's now time to park up the car in our hotel and let's go and explore Bayeux. So I'm not going to show you Bayeux again. You'll have to pick that up in the playlist at the end. But trust me, a visit to Bayeux is absolutely worth it, and if you want to know more, be sure to check that out. Likewise, I'm not going to repeat the road trip we took to the British Normandy Memorial and the other destinations we squeezed in, but I will look at the destination chargers we used and how that is the secret to a successful road trip with an EV. So we're going to head out of the hotel and I'll give you a summary of my thinking. So the journey is around 60 miles and I really want to get back by mid-afternoon. We're leaving the hotel with around 75% and the indicated range is about 190 miles. But I've learnt this is quite flexible as it's based on the previous driving style. This should be more sedate and more range. If I put my destinations into Google Maps in the car, it'll give me an estimated state of charge at each location. The simple truth is I don't need to charge at all. However, if I'm going to visit a location and there is available charging nearby, then why not? Destination charging, while slower, is also cheaper, so that makes sense. Sadly, at the British Normandy Memorial, there is no EV charging. In my mind, this is an oversight for a memorial that was opened in 2021 with a car park this big. After a slight hiccup, we return to the hotel and then head back to our next destination of Port de Bessin, and we have a charger available in a car park. So after a wander around and a spot of lunch, we'd been parked up for a little under an hour and a half and taken on around 16 kilowatts for £6.62. That's cost us 42 pence per kilowatt hour as opposed to 51 at the Caen charge point yesterday. I need to mention charging losses. The amount you are charged is the amount you draw. In the process of delivering it to the battery, there are small losses, and if like me you're calculating the numbers, you do need to take that into account. There's something else I also need to mention, and that's car parking charges. Quite often, despite the fact you're charging, you still need to pay the parking charges. Check the signage, that car park was free. Then there's idle fees. If you're connected but not drawing a charge, then some providers will have an idle fee, Tesla being one, but there are many others. Once again, just check. In our video of this full road trip, we head to Bayeux Memorial, but here we're going to make our way to the last stopover of Arromanches to show you something. 2 chargers in use. Our advice here is obvious. Don't rely on them, use them for your convenience. Arriving back at the hotel for our last night in Bayeux, we had a choice of a 33-mile route to our next destination, and even if you didn't see our video on Bayeux to Dives-sur-Mer, you'll know I'm going to take the more scenic route. That's what we did. It came in at 113 miles, taking in Cérisy-la-Florette, Clécy and Falaise. Of course, I'm not going to repeat that, but I will show you the charging stops, failures and all, costs and a little mystery too. After adding nearly 16 kilowatts yesterday and only consuming just under 14, so we're about 85% and a range of 270 miles. The plan for today is to pop into a few destinations, maybe grab a coffee in a patisserie, a spot of lunch at Clécy. Could be nice. Falaise is a must really, it's the birthplace of William the Conqueror. We would love to be at a hotel between 3 and 5 to give us time to explore Carbourg. If we grab a charge en route, that would be great. We know there won't be any at the Abbey Saint-Vigor in Cérisy-la-Florette. However, Viller Bocage seems an option and looks a pretty little Norman town, but that's where the plans start to unfold. Our first attempt at this fast charger wouldn't authenticate with our Electroverse card. It was a 50 kilowatt charger. I notice now it looks like it's been upgraded to 100 kilowatts and it's free. So not perturbed, we head to the next chargers, which are near the tourist office. And to be honest, we don't have any luck there. And I was disappointed. It meant I was going to skip Viller Bocage. Yes, I might be having a tizzy, but surely I can find another village with a charger and a cafe en route, so off we set. Let me explain the difference between AC and DC chargers if you don't know. The 50 kilowatt and above are normally DC, that's direct current, and the same as the battery takes, so the power goes through the battery management system and straight into the battery, and the cable is attached to the machine. With AC, or alternating current, the car converts the AC to DC before going into the battery management system. A lot of EVs max out at 11 kilowatts, so even though the charger says 22 kilowatts, all I can pull is 11 kilowatts. With AC chargers, you normally need to use your own cable, so it's a bit more of a faff. Anyway, back on the route, and the next charger's at Les Monts, and they're easy enough to find, but we have competition. Parked up and plugged in, we set off to explore. However, in our haste to locate a charger, which we really didn't need, we may not have chose the best location. Nothing really jumped out at us as somewhere we'd like to stop, and it was getting closer to lunch. It's just gone 11, so our coffee stop and patisserie went by the wayside. We stopped for a total of 18 minutes plus faff time and drew 3.14 kilowatts at a cost of £1.31. Still, a charge is a charge, I suppose. Our next location was going to be Clécy, where we planned to have lunch. It was only 15 miles away, and yes, there's a charger there. So as if by magic, we've arrived, and it looks a charming little place, like so much of rural France. Although the location of the charger surprised me, I almost felt like I was parking on someone's private parking space. Google tells me it's a minute to the boulangerie and the tourist office for the Swiss Normand region of Normandy we're in. We stopped for a little over an hour and drew just over 12 kilowatt hours of charge for £5.19. Again, a cost of 42p per kilowatt hour. Now it's time for our next destination of Falaise and our little mystery. Once again, I'm going to wave my magic wand and we'll arrive at Falaise. So we found our charging spot, plugged the car in and spent an hour exploring Falaise. On returning, we unplugged and set off on our way again. Normally what happens, within a couple of minutes of unplugging, we get a receipt. But to this day, we haven't been charged for this charge. And we did get one. I just don't know how much. As we make our way to the destination for the next couple of days, Dives-sur-Mer, I'll explain how I have so much detail about the journey. The Polestar 2 has an app available called the Journey Log, and it sort of does what it says on the tin. It logs the start and stop times, address, latitude for each leg of a journey, along with the distance, consumption, start and stop odometer readings, and in the latest version, the start and stop state of charge. You can export this via email into a CSV file. I do that and process it, store the data in a database and pull the information I need into Excel. The app should run in the background, but it can be a bit flaky, not necessarily recording each leg. What I do is launch the app each time in the car and then it seems to work fine. If you didn't think I was a geek before, you surely do now. So now we're at Dives-sur-Mer, crossing the River Dives, and take note of the Lidl on our left. When we booked our accommodation it didn't have EV charging, but that wasn't an issue because the Lidl did, and it had a 120 kilowatt charger. And I had a plan. Tomorrow morning I was going to slip the car on charge while we popped into Lidl to pick up a few local delicacies that you don't see at home, and maybe a few items that go clink. In the time it took us to complete that little shopping trip, we added 26.24 kilowatts in a little over half an hour for a cost of £8.75. That's a very reasonable 33p per kilowatt hour. Our final day is a 250-mile journey home. As usual, we booked the late afternoon shuttle. Just a little point of note, the day we arrived, a bank of EV chargers would be installed. If you check now, you have 6 22 kilowatt charge points costing 40p per kilowatt hour, plus a €2 connection fee. Significantly more than the Lidl. Is this the new minibar? The price of convenience? Anyway, we get one last look at Normandy, and a place we've not seen on any other video in the series. We're going to take the coastal road to Deauville, another of those Belle Epoque resorts, and its famous beach. And I have no idea why I just did this U-turn. Am I being a sheep? Let's head to the beach. And have you seen these beach huts? They're famous for the dividers featuring the names of, let's say, Hollywood stars, not all in front of the screen. These go on for so long, and time is not our friend, but they are a must-see. But it's not just the beach huts. Look at the golden sands. Everything looks quite organised, and I bet there's a cost to getting sun-kissed. When you look around, there is a sense of the golden age of Hollywood, and it's one of the things I find France good at, retaining a sense of the past, whatever era that may be. It's no surprise that this stretch of coast is known as the Parisian Riviera. We don't plan to stay here too long, it's just to get a sense of the place and see those beach huts. The journey log tells me it's 40 minutes, but that's enough time to take in what we want. I think Deauville may be a stopover for a future adventure. What's your thoughts? It doesn't look too bad, does it? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Actually, we've stayed here briefly, but that was back in 2001, and that was a last minute stopover. And now back to the car, and I really am left wondering why I did that U-turn when I have to do another one to get us back on track. But it does give us one last look at Deauville, and isn't she pretty? It's a little over 8 miles to the A13 and 27 to the Pont de Normandie, and today's crossing should be a little clearer. So obviously I'm going to compress this section and show you my little mistake. Even with all the tech available in the Polestar, I still need to listen to instructions, and I should be heading towards Rouen. Oops, it looks like we're going via Caen. Hopefully we don't pass through a toll. My aim is one junction and then turn off and return. It turns out listening to instructions is important, and something Janice tells me I'm not very good at all. Whatever. Anyway, here's the next junction. No tolls, so it's just a few minutes added to our journey and a few extra miles. So a little more about route planning versus impromptu freestyling. It is possible in the Polestar, as in many other EVs, to just pump in the destination to the navigation system and drive. It will calculate charge points as you need them and prepare the battery for the charge. However, this will probably mean you'll be waiting at services a little more. I can kill time in the Polestar, but it is frustrating if you just want to get on your way. I've charged 8 times, not including the ones at home, compared to say 3 with our petrol car, and as I mentioned right at the very beginning, if you can remember back that far, one of them was the night before. So for frequency of stops, the old school win out. On the planning front, well, that's me. In my working life I like to plan. Sure, I was flexible enough to handle the surprises, but never no plans. Before I continue though, I have the first glimpse of the Pont de Normandie, and today's crossing should be more pleasant. So back to the planning. For the framework of a trip I use Google My Maps. I believe you need a Google account and login, but that's easy enough to set up, and it's free. In it, I can create different layers for routes, stopovers, points of interest, and there's a link for this trip in the description below. I've used it for years on many trips. Once I've completed a trip, I add the actual route I've taken on another layer, along with photos of the destinations. I have a little USB GPS data logger I use to capture the actual route we've taken. I can also mark points of interest along the route for later reference. Google Maps is great for planning at a high level, and I can export the routes as a KML or KMZ file, but what is frustrating that I can't import that into Google Maps or any other routing software for that matter. If you know of a solution that works, then let me know in the comments below. Another bugbear of mine with all routing so far I've come across is that you can set the route criteria, like avoid motorways and tolls at a top level, but you can't do it at a segment level. An example here would be if I wanted to drive from Calais to Le Havre with motorways and tolls turned on, and then take the route avoiding them to Bayeux. I can't. Not in a single trip. I need to create two plans. While I'm at it, another moan about the routes that you can plan. All of the software I know allows you to add stopovers, but not necessarily waypoints. So in the south of France, I want to take the D2 through the scenic landscape of La Grande Roche, the Great Rocks. It's more challenging than it really needs to be. However, when it goes into the routing software, it wants to take me from A to B as quickly as possible. I want to go the scenic route. Anyway, our journey continues. The ease of this journey is striking, and just so you know, this is a Friday. And the return journey contains less tolls, as we passed Caen via the scenic route on our way to Dives-sur-Mer. But the cost is still creeping up, and I will give a full breakdown of our transit costs at the end. We're closing in on our charging stop. Well, actually it's more of a comfort break. We left Dives-sur-Mer at 8:30 and it's now closing in on 1 o'clock. And the scenario happens that everyone says is all too frequent, and that's all the bays are occupied. Still, I need a comfort break, so we find a regular space and park up. We already have a plan B, we still have plenty of range, and it's touch and go, but I can still get home if I want to. Anyway, we complete the necessaries and return to our car and notice there are a few bays free. We complete a lap and get on a charger, with a certain sense of deja vu. See, I've slipped in a little French. We headed back in, picked up a coffee and a pastry or two. Our last true French ones for a couple of months. By the time we've woofed those down, we picked up 50 kilowatts of charge in 24 minutes at a cost of $19.24. That works out at 48p per kilowatt hour. But in truth, we've overcharged. Let me be clear, you can't actually overcharge an EV, but I'll get home with over 50% charge, and then I can top up for 7p per kilowatt hour. So not the most cost effective. Now back to route planning. There's one piece of software that is really good for EV drivers, and that's a Better Route Planner, or ABRP. There's a free standard version and a premium version. I have the paid version and it's €50 annual fee. This gives you a bunch of extra features including real-time traffic and weather, as well as readings of the state of charge from the car. There is also a version for our Polestar, but I don't use it because the routing software is not presented on the cockpit display, only on the tablet in the centre. There's a lot of benefits to the software, especially around planning, and you can add waypoints. You can also share the route with Google Maps on your phone and send them to your car. However, it's not perfect and the destinations don't carry forward the names. There seems to be a solution to my problems. I just need to wait until the software evolves. Anyway, let me give you a glimpse of ABRP. If you have an EV and you haven't tried it, then why not? Give it a go, it may be helpful. I've included two views, one with the route details and one with the overview of the settings. It's pretty comprehensive. One thing I would say is it's cautious, or maybe it's our driving style. We arrived with more charge than predicted. So as we pass through the last of the tolls, let's have a look at the costs. Firstly, the tolls, as this applies to everyone, I've broken it into outbound and homebound. So the total cost was a little under £50 sterling. Now let's look at the fuel costs. For this trip we've charged the car 10 times, including the free one at Falaise and twice at home, once to top it up to 100% and once when we returned. I've broken it into public and home. The total charges for this trip were £75.5p for the 688 miles we covered, working out at 11p per mile. I'm happy with that. as we arrive at the shuttle. It's quieter than it normally is. We're here at 2:30 and this is a bit of a shocker. So now it's time for me to wrap this up. If you've made it this far, thank you. And leave me a comment. I'd love to know what you thought of it. Anyway, time to say goodbye. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and happy travels.